Good day. In today's video webinar, I'm going to talk about innovation, what it is, how to do it, why to do it. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Jamie Place. I'm CEO of a consulting company called Digital Thinking. I've held executive positions in 3 major banks over 15 years, starting with Wells Fargo, then Bank of America, then Mellon Financial. I was managing technology, innovation, and business strategy, and for the last 10 years, reporting to the CEO of the bank and serving on the executive management committee. For the last 10 years, I've been an independent consultant. As an SBBN partner for several years, I'm familiar with innovations across financial institutions in the emerging economies, and I've led innovation efforts firsthand in the U.S. and international banks, both large and small. This webinar is the first of a 2-part series on innovation. What we'll focus on today is innovation generally. In the next webinar, scheduled for September the 27th, we'll narrow our focus a bit and talk about innovation in banking, specifically small business banking products. What we're going to cover today is what is innovation, examples of it, the goals of it, what innovation is not, which is equally important, and approaching innovation using various techniques to encourage it within your organization and creating a structure that makes it more possible to innovate. Innovation doesn't lend itself to a project plan, but there are approaches that can be used to encourage and support innovative thinking. My goal in this webinar is for each of you to feel confident that you can apply what you learn to your own bank and perhaps lead innovation for your work group, whether you're in product, service delivery, IT, sales, marketing, loan processing. There is virtually nothing that can't be improved with intelligent innovation. What is innovation? Well, think of innovations you admire. Are they technology-based, like a new smartphone? Are they resulting in convenience, like being able to move money through mobile networks? Are they process-based, like being able to track a package on the web using the parcel services tracking system? Some are probably simple, like wheels-on luggage, one of my personal favorites. Innovation is a better way of performing processes, creating products, delivering service. It's best when it's organic. And what I mean by that is when it comes from within the organization. Certainly consultants can help you create the conditions for innovation, but they won't be your bank's innovators because innovation is based on knowledge of your particular customers, market, competition, regulation, and processes. It is not a cookie-cutter approach. It's based on your individual bank and its customers. Let's talk about some examples of innovation. I've mentioned the wheels-on luggage, as I say, one of my favorites. It's one of those, why didn't I think of it, ideas. The problem is luggage is heavy, and moving to and through airports can involve long distances. It's one of those ideas that was rapidly adapted by all luggage manufacturers. It's now really a higher standard within the luggage business, and everybody has to do it. Touch screens on cell phones and tablets. That's a really interesting one because it created a very counterintuitive behavior in the various age demographics. As we all know, the earliest adopters of most technology, certainly mobile technology, are young people, and the slowest adopters are older people. Once touchscreen cell phones came out, that changed, and the adoption rate among the older demographic was exactly the same. And the reason, I speculate, is that the keyboard was a barrier for older people. They didn't grow up using a keyboard necessarily. And actually for people of my generation, a lot of people never really even learned to type. So you take away that barrier and you have a change that is really counterintuitive. Customized products for a customer segment. This, I think, is one of the most important approaches to innovation, example of innovation for small business banking. And I know that's not our topic right now, but it will be for our next webinar. You know that your small business clients need a different credit process than your bank's corporate customers. It needs to be faster. It needs to be simpler. It needs to be streamlined. Creating a streamlined credit process can be a competitive advantage if you're the first in the market to do it. And of course, if you manage the risks at the same time. But it can give the bank that first offers it in the market a pricing advantage. Now this is going to erode over time as competitors follow, but that can be very powerful, both for customer loyalty and for revenue. Online banking continues to offer opportunities and ways for the customer to partner with the bank. And online banking, of course, is a form of moving from paper to electronic. Moving from paper to electronic offers two things. One, it's faster. Two, it's cheaper. But three, it's interactive. And that's what online banking was in the beginning. It was a way for you not only to see your statement long before it arrived in your mailbox, but for you to interact with that information. And I'll give you an example from my own experience. I regularly go on my bank's online banking site to look at my credit card. That's the primary way I pay, and I like to track the transactions that have been posted to that account to be sure I know what the balance is, and I look for any fraudulent activity. When I see a transaction I don't recognize, I can immediately alert the bank, and they can simply reverse the transaction if it does turn out to be fraudulent. That's much more effective than waiting 30 days for me to receive the statement and then letting them know that I'm going to challenge a transaction, because by then it's very difficult for them to unwind it. And in the U.S., the bank bears the cost for that kind of fraud. So that's a great example of the many opportunities for innovation that can come from an advance in technology. Self-service on the web is an extremely good place to see the kind of innovation that has happened. It increases customer control and satisfaction while decreasing the vendor's customer service personnel costs. It's the best kind of innovation because it's a win for the customer and it's a win for the business. It seemed like a very novel idea initially, outsourcing your customer service to your customer. But in fact, even though people said, I only want to deal with a human being, they love the control and convenience that self-service offers. One of my favorite examples is the package tracking system. FedEx developed this system long ago. They were the early innovator here, and it was for use by its telephone agents when they were talking to customers on the phone. Someone would call and say, where's my package? They'll say, just a minute, let me check. And they'd say, well, it has shipped and it should be in your hands tomorrow. Putting on the internet and opening it up to customers to serve themselves is, again, a win-win. Not only have the customers been delighted to be able to track it themselves however many times they want and see exactly where it is and not wait for a customer service person to be available, but FedEx has greatly lowered its cost by having the customers serve themselves. Now, something else has happened here which is really interesting. By putting this out, by creating this innovation, implementing it well, FedEx got a huge competitive advantage until others began to follow. What FedEx did was to create a new standard, and that's what innovation often does. UPS now has an excellent package tracking system on the web, and I'm sure other competitors do too. That's just the one I'm familiar with. At that point, an innovation becomes a cost of doing business, and the early mover advantage is lost. And now UPS has been more successful than FedEx, but they were using an innovation that FedEx developed. Another one I like a lot, you can see on the slide, is an innovation of Apple's. It is a store without any cashier lines or lanes or special people whose job is to take your money. They don't have customers standing in line. The person who sells them the product and shows them how to use it will also ring up the sale. Now, what does this do? Well, first, it is very good for the customer. They don't have to worry that after they've chosen the product, they have to stand in line, wait for a cashier to help them. They know that once they're talking to someone, that someone is theirs for the entire time they need in order to make a decision and complete the sale. For Apple, it means they don't lose potential sales just because the line is too long. But there's one other sort of subtle thing, and I haven't seen any research on this, and that is Apple stores can be very, very crowded. I live close to the flagship store, and anytime I go in there, I look in the store and I go, oh my, I'd better come back at a different time because it is so crowded. But then my experience tells me, no, once you get a person, which is not hard to do because there's so many of them, that person is going to deal with you and only you. I think the volume that that store does in business of selling Apple products must be huge considering the footprint of the building. I'm anxious to see some data on that, but that's probably an unforeseen, very good outcome of the innovation of doing away with cashier's lines. So let's take a high-level look at innovation and what is the need or opportunity that is met by an innovation. I like to do this because sometimes it helps to work backwards, to sort of reverse engineer an innovation we like, to examine what problem it solved, what kind of thinking probably went on to wind up creating this innovation. Think of my favorite, the wheels on luggage. Well, obviously the need it met, which was probably unknown at the time, was speed, convenience, utility, and probably customer delight as well. The touch screen on the cell phone created convenience, certainly created customer delight, but also overcame a barrier. If you understand the barriers your customers have in using your products or services, then you can innovate around removing those barriers. Thinking of customized products for a customer segment. Well, that clearly creates better value for the customer. And that value for the customer is going to result in probably things like premium pricing for the company that does that. It will also result in more customers within that customer segment. A store with no cashier lines. Well, you have speed, convenience, customer delight because they're dealing with smart people who know exactly what they need and can help them assess what accessories they might want to put on it, and then just take care of them and get them out of the store without having to hand them off to anyone else. And as I said, I think this also is going to create a greater ability for Apple to use its retail square footage to create more sales. Moving your delivery from paper to electronic gives you efficiency, gives you speed, gives you a cost advantage, and more than that, gives you a foundation upon which to build the ability to interact with your clients and to continue to innovate on this platform, which by its very nature of two-way communication makes a lot of additional innovation, probably many of which we can't imagine right now, possible in the future. The package tracking system that's open to customers, efficiency, speed, customer delight, and certainly lower costs for the business. Let's talk about what innovation is not. Innovation is not a genius that few people possess. There's a lot of mythology about innovation, such as only some brilliant people like Steve Jobs are able to do it, or that innovation comes from one smart person's brain as opposed to a team effort, that only small companies can innovate. None of these is true. Innovation is hard work. It's not a light bulb going off in someone's head. Innovation can be supported in a business by culture, structure, and management support. It's not just a bright idea in a vacuum. But not all innovations are win-win, and that's the subject of much of this slide. Those that are not win-win, good for the business, good for the customer, are dangerous. And the U.S. banking industry found this out in the first decade of the 21st century. Some of the false innovations on this slide, such as marketing schemes that increase fees to one customer segment and decreasing them for another, or even more egregious, rearranging the check and debit clearing order so that customers will incur more overdrafts and the company will make more money. These are really very dangerous innovations. They certainly made a lot of money for the U.S. banking industry, but they abuse customers, especially those least able to pay and least financially literate. Overdraft coverage seems like a protection when an important transaction is covered even when there isn't enough money in the current account. But $35 fees, in some cases as many as 7 a day, for each small purchase after an account is exhausted is abuse, especially when account balances aren't disclosed to customers at the point of sale. So in an example that's been used by everybody, I may go in to buy a cup of coffee and I have a $5 bill in my hand, but instead in my pocket, but instead I pull out my debit card. Well, if I knew that that $3 cup of coffee is going to result in a $25 or $35 overdraft fee, I'd pay with the small amount of cash I have. But since I don't know that, and using your debit card is so convenient, you might just go ahead and inadvertently incur that very high charge. Free checking seemed like a customer-friendly innovation, but to pay the actual cost of providing the service, banks loaded up on sneaky gotcha fees for their customers. High balance holders were often excused from paying those fees, but others, those who could least afford it, were not. The banks made a lot of money, but it was ultimately very bad for banks, and they now, thanks to the Federal Reserve and the regulators, are not able to do these things and have incurred a terrible blow to their reputation among their customers and to the notion of trust between the bank and the customer, that the bank is really going to keep the customer safe, when in fact what these big banks did was to take advantage of the customer to make a lot of money for themselves. So never, never ever think that tricking your customer is innovation. There's one more word I'd like to say on what innovation is not, which is not on the slide, but I want to take a minute and talk about it. There's botched innovation. Kodak is the poster child for botched innovation. They knew that digital photography was the next stage of photography, and indeed, they held the patent in the 1980s. The board of directors knew they would have to make a move from the film-based photography into digital photography at some point to keep their dominant market share. But they just couldn't find the right time. They were making so much money with their high-end products, which they continued to load up with bells and whistles and charge more for, that they just couldn't bring themselves to cannibalize that very profitable product with lower cost and lower quality initially, digital products, because that would cut their margin. Now we call this eating your own children. But if you don't, someone else does. Japanese manufacturers came out with increasingly better and better and better digital cameras, such that now they're the equal of the products Kodak used to make, but at a hugely, hugely reduced price. And as a result, Kodak lost this market. It can't even sell its digital photography patent. It essentially has gone, not quite out of business, but almost, knowing what it should have done and just not being able to pull the trigger. That's another kind of what good innovation is not. Okay, what are the things you can do, the techniques you can use that are more than just the bright idea of a brilliant person and hoping that will strike someday? Well, there's a number of things. You can build, you can organize for innovation, and I'll give you some examples of that. You can build a culture of innovation. That's probably the most important thing. And then you can create processes for assessing ideas and testing them so that you're not recreating the innovative process every time you come up with a good idea. So, organizing for innovation. At the strategic level, a company needs to think about what role it wants to take in innovation for each opportunity that presents itself, because each role has some different implications that the bank or whoever needs to know about and understand. Most banks will use different roles for different types of innovation. For example, being first to market. That's always very appealing. Being the leading innovator, taking advantage of the first mover advantage, being able to use premium pricing, and getting a reputation as an innovative company. But when an institution wants to play this role, it must be prepared for the high risk of failure. Not all companies are comfortable with this level of risk, especially when it can involve reputation risk, financial risk, and other kinds of risk. Failure could also be very demoralizing to staff and can hurt the institution in the eyes of its customers. While failure is acceptable for a technology company, it's generally not acceptable for a bank. An example from years ago, Apple was the first to develop handwriting recognition software, and they brought it out in a product. Well, it was the butt of jokes on late-night television for months because it made such funny translations of your handwriting into text, which you could then edit on the device. It was a complete failure, but it didn't hurt Apple. That's been forgotten in light of its many successful products. When this strategy works, it can lead to new customers, at least for the period of time only one institution is offering it. It can lead to greater revenue, and it can lead to big enhancement in one's reputation. A less risky approach is to innovate with key partners. For example, identifying new technologies and share the risk with the partner to launch a new product or service. Sharing the financial risk can enable an institution to take more risk and possibly to lock up the market for a short period of time if it's successful. Think about, again, in the U.S., when Apple launched the iPhone, they launched it only on the AT&T network. There's a few major mobile networks in the U.S., and when only one network has a very popular product, that network is going to get a lot of new subscribers. This happened. It led to a huge increase of subscribers to the AT&T network and resulted in a reputation for poor quality service for AT&T because their network was overloaded. Sometimes it's best to be a follower, watching the competition, seeing what they're doing, what works, and then copying them, essentially, once that success is clear. We'll talk more about that strategy in the next webinar, where we focus on innovation in product development for small business. The term fast follower really just means copying the competition when it develops products or services or distribution approaches that can be effective for your bank. It's a smart, low-risk strategy, and I always recommend it where appropriate, and that's the key. Is a particular product or service that has been successful for a competitor going to be the right choice for your bank? Maybe, maybe not. When an innovation raises the bar, such as online banking, then competitors have no choice but to follow. Finding the right timing for your institution for a particular innovation is the challenge. I support a small bank in California. It has about $20 billion in deposits. It is now an early innovator in putting EMV chips on credit cards and on debit cards. It's doing this because its clients are wealthy and they travel overseas frequently where only an EMV chip is accepted. The expense is not financially justified in the ordinary way, which is to spread it across a huge number of clients. But it's a good investment for them because it meets a clear customer need. On the other hand, their website is not as sophisticated as competitors' websites because their client base is older and their emphasis is on personal interaction. Their clients are just not as interested in banking on the web as their competitors' customers. This is the sort of thing you need to really understand. There's not one approach that's going to work for every potential innovation that might happen within your company. Don't let these different approaches dictate what your institution might do with a particular opportunity. The most successful companies adopt strategies based on what is right for their customers, their business model, their investment appetite, and their institutional readiness. Organizing for innovation. There are things you can do that will create a fertile environment for innovation. Here's a number of things I've done, and all have worked well in various environments. First, brainstorming. If you can bring people from different areas together and have them talk about a goal, for example, a new product for a segment of small business, and you have right there the perspective of marketing, sales, service, IT, and compliance all at the table, the ideas will be much better than if only a marketing team was working on it or only a compliance team was working on it. Different areas of expertise will prevent bad ideas. And as people become more knowledgeable about the needs and concerns of other areas by interacting with those other disciplines, they become better innovators as well. Now, bringing in a consultant can work very well. Some consultants specialize in facilitated innovative thinking with tools and exercise that invigorate the team's best thinking. As an example, there's a tool I use frequently called an assumption analysis. And this is to look at a new idea from each stakeholder's point of view. In other words, if this is a new product, let's say a retail banking product, you would want to look at it from a financial point of view. Is it going to make money? From a customer point of view, are customers going to like this product? From a risk point of view, from an IT point of view, can we support this product? And with all of those with all of those stakeholders' perspectives represented, it becomes pretty clear if there is a big flaw in the idea. Communication is key to innovation and really to just good management of a company. And yet, frequently, I'll go into a company and product will be about to launch a new product that marketing hasn't even heard about yet. So there's a lot of value in making sure that many perspectives are involved, and especially where there's a stakeholder organization that's going to have to do something because of an idea. Bring them in early. Make sure they know what you're doing and that the needs or concerns they have been addressed before the planning has gone too far down the road. Another idea is to use an internal or external, and I think external is better, and I'll say why, in a role that I call the devil's advocate. It's very easy for a team to fall in love with an idea, especially if it began with an important executive or maybe the CEO. This can make it very difficult to criticize or challenge the idea. Now, if it's not good, it'll fail. It'll fail in the test phase. But that phase is further along in the process, and failure there is more expensive than deciding it's not a good idea at the assessment stage. So a devil's advocate is someone who is charged with criticizing an idea. He or she doesn't need to worry about who am I going to offend. Is somebody going to be mad at me because I say I think this product has more risk than we can tolerate? That's sometimes easier done by an outsider. But if it's very clear what the role is and that you have the right person in it, it can be done internally as well. Now, there's another idea for organization or innovation that I want to talk about, although it's not here on the slide. And that's something called the idea bank, in which members of staff can submit an idea, that idea that is vetted and analyzed. And the good ideas are adopted and implemented. Sounds very good. And I've heard this has been very successful for some banks. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that after running this function at 3 different banks, I never did get it to work well. Ideas from people who don't thoroughly understand the basis of a particular business are rarely good. I'll give you an example of that. We were looking at Wells Fargo to grow our retail deposit base. And a very smart guy came up with this idea of offering a new checking account product that had no minimum balance, no fees, and offered a high interest rate. Would customers like it? Absolutely, they would love it. Would it make any money for the bank? No. It would lose a lot of money for the bank, not only because the cost of maintaining such an account and paying the high interest rate would be a cost borne by the bank with no associated revenue. And in addition to that, it would cannibalize other retail deposit products because everybody would want to be in that product. So that's just a bad idea, and it's a bad idea not because the person who submitted it is stupid, but because that person didn't understand the retail deposit business. That is the kind of idea you very often get when you ask an entire company to come up with bright ideas about how you can better serve your customers. The time needed to analyze these ideas can be substantial, and providing feedback to the idea originator can be very difficult. Few people like to tell somebody their idea did not pass the test. And in my experience, few employees accept that their idea was not a good idea. You wind up, at least I did, in very long discussions with people that leave the employee unhappy and eat up a lot of time with no productive outcome at all. Building a culture of innovation is by far the most important thing a company can do, because everybody can be and should be an innovator. It's not a specialty role. It is part of every role. Staff who do a job know that job best. If the company has a culture of innovation, they'll be able to see ways to make that product better, deliver it faster, deliver it at a lower cost, enhance it. They are the right ones to do that innovation. But innovation doesn't happen all the time, and it's because there's many factors that discourage innovation. Top-down hierarchies are rarely good at innovation. Too much respect for higher-ups can discourage innovation. Somebody who is directly responsible for a small piece of the process may have a thought, but if it's a very hierarchical organization, they may have to pass it to their supervisor, who passes it to a manager, who passes it to a higher-up. And each of those handoffs have risk. You may offend someone. And it's just not a good culture for innovation and openness and welcoming new ideas. Most innovative companies have very open environments and relatively flat organizational structure. Even more important, they have a culture that accepts failure. It's called falling forward. One project may fail, but you learn so much from it that you built the foundation for the next project that may well succeed. Accepting failure is more than just a statement that a company might want to make about itself. Accepting failure is a very difficult thing to do. People are generally punished when they lose money for the company, when they soak up a lot of resources with no good result. It's a very meaningful statement to make that the company is going to accept a certain level of failure, that it is key to the culture of innovation. So is sharing information. We've already talked about the problem of one part of the company doing a lot of work on an innovation without bringing in all of the other parts of the company that will be impacted if that innovation is implemented. Sharing information broadly is often not a characteristic of a hierarchical, tightly controlled, fearful company. A company whose people are fearful about losing their jobs, about not making their numbers, is rarely an innovative company. So how are innovative ideas assessed? Innovators must know a lot to be successful. They must know their customers' business and the resultant needs, ideally before the customers know those needs themselves. They must understand the process that will be impacted. Will the new idea raise risk or lower performance? They need to know the financial impact. Will innovation cause problems elsewhere? For example, as we talked about, cannibalizing another source of revenue. Feasibility. Can this company market, implement, and support the innovation? Infrastructure. Can the bank's IT and physical infrastructure support the innovation without additional investment, or perhaps with minor investment? All of these things are knowable, and they can all be examined and all these questions answered during the assessment phase. This is absolutely key If you do this work well, the possibility of success is much greater. And then you can move on to testing the ideas. Structure can help. It can help innovation along. You can't structure innovation like a project plan, but you can provide some structure to the process so that you're not recreating it every time you have an innovative idea. This diagram is a loose structure to ensure that a potential innovation is vetted for all its impacts and all its stakeholders. The test phase will vary by the type of idea. For process implementation, such as eliminating the requirement that the customer make her payments at a branch office, risk management will be more important than customer interviews, although knowing how much customers value a more convenient process should also be explored. Harking back to the U.S. example, if the innovators at U.S. banks that made so much money by exploiting their customers had asked customers whether they wanted a predictable account maintenance fee or punitive penalty fees that were largely unavoidable, I don't think there's much doubt about what they would have said. Questions to ask yourself about your own bank's readiness, preparedness for innovation. And some of these questions might lead you to things you think your bank ought to do, ought to learn more about. First, does your bank know enough about its customers, both current and its target market, to understand their perceived and unmet needs? Has the bank done customer research, market research, competitive analysis? Does it really know what's available and what's needed but not available? That's a key place to think about innovation. Are there ways to streamline necessary processes for some categories of customers? For example, standardize streamlined credit processes for clients who are repeat borrowers. Has the bank reviewed its delivery technologies, including branch, for opportunities to lower costs or improve the customer experience through optimizing the faster delivery channels, or aligning an existing product or segment with a new delivery channel? A major innovation Wells Fargo has done is to have a small business banking product that is only available online. That makes it much cheaper for them to deliver. And the small business banking segment that they are looking for doesn't have time to come into a bank, doesn't have time to talk to an RM. It just wants to do its banking from wherever, whenever it wants, maximum convenience and lowest cost. It's able to deliver that with this product. Does your bank utilize relationship managers for SME business, or just depend on branch personnel to service and sell SMEs along with retail customers? Depending on your market, SMEs may well be the most profitable and growth area that your bank has. If this is the case, then understanding the business segments within your market can be critical. You might have relationship managers for the transportation small businesses, relationship managers for the trade small businesses, relationship managers for the export business that can really help those small businesses with their business, not just their banking needs, but with their business. That will be a trusted relationship that will create more business, great loyalty, and the opportunity for premium pricing. So, in summary, these are the things you need to think about. Creating an innovative culture, understanding the market, understanding the competition. Where appropriate, creating a separate SME department with staff that knows business, not just banking, but the business of your customers. Be customer-driven, know their needs, and apply deep knowledge to innovation. Make innovation everybody's job. make innovation options a key component of IT proposals. You have to justify an IT proposal by the problems that it solves, the cost that it saves. Put in your IT proposal a requirement to name what options that we're not going to do right now, but that we might want to do later, does this IT upgrade enable? And of course, celebrate successful innovation. People love to be recognized, love for their team to be recognized, love to think they're acknowledged for the good job they're doing, especially when they take a risk and come up with something innovative. It's not hard to come up with good ideas for innovation if the environment encourages creativity and management is open and welcoming of new ideas. It can still be hard to implement even the best ideas because they will affect many people and processes, and change is always an uncomfortable thing for human beings. Like so much in life and in business, innovation begins with knowledge and succeeds with good execution. In part 2 of this series, we'll get more specific and discuss innovation relative to small business banking. I hope you will join us for the live webinar on September the 22nd. Thank you.